Hello everyone, so today we are going to do a reaction video, and it's going to be a video by YouTuber Not Even French, and her video is called What Not to Do in France, Avoid These Faux Pas in France. And I know this video has gone a little bit viral, so it has over 1 million views. It's gone viral, I believe, because there was some controversy over it. I'm not exactly sure what. I just know there's something about baguettes in there. I'm not sure, I didn't watch the video yet. I wanted to really react to it live. Just so you know, I will cut out some bits of her video so that my video is not too long. So let's go!
Hello YouTube! Today I wanted to chat about some of the things that I've learnt through living in France over the last 5 years around the things you do not do in France. The first thing that you should not be doing here in France is speaking too loudly. If you're in a public place, if you're in a supermarket, if you're standing in a queue, if you're on the metro system in Paris, you definitely should use your inside voices and don't speak too loudly. You'll notice if you take the metro in Paris, for example, that it's almost always deadly silent.
So this is kind of true, I do agree. I wouldn't say we need to be extremely quiet in the metro. I'm saying that because I've been to Japan, and in Japan it's expected to be actually silent or like whisper. But in France you can still sort of chat or talk in a moderate tone, but you will definitely get stares if you start just sort of shouting or having very loud conversations on the phone. Usually people will not say anything, but I don't think it's something you should sort of take advantage of, because we can be sort of shy to tell you these things. But yeah, it's not seen as a good or nice thing to do, to be loud in general.
The next thing that you do not do in France is not to control your kids. I know what you're thinking, kids will be kids, but I'm just warning you that it could come with some pretty dirty looks. I've been on the TGV train system a few times here in France, and there have been, you know, little 6-month-old babies playing with keys. There were several French people who were giving the parents eyes like this, like... There were even women who were sort of turning around and going, shh, and they start sort of getting quite agitated, and they may even huff and puff it like... If you aren't showing that you're in control of your kids and making sure that they're respecting their environment around them and keeping the noise levels low, you may be told off or scorned by French people.
I definitely agree with her. I think it's important as much as possible to control your kids, and yeah, I will just specify that it's not expected that kids will be silent, because that's not possible, you know, kids will just cry. But I think, in my opinion, and that might actually just be me, I don't know if other French people would agree, or Parisian people, but I think if I notice or I see that parents aren't even trying to make their kids quiet, that annoys me more. Because if they try and the kids are just upset, then I just think it's not their fault, you know, there's nothing they can do. But if they're just like on the phone and the kids are like having a tantrum literally next to them, I just feel like you could make a bit of an effort, you could try, like, distract them. I think she's right on this one.
Social faux pas will come in handy if you are to eat with the French or be invited around to a French person's home to enjoy a meal. Just know that you never start eating before every person at the table has been served. And
that's true, try not to do that. It's kind of seen as rude, and when someone does that, especially in France, because in other countries I'm more forgiving, but in France it's kind of seen as, yeah, just rude.
There's a definite moment where you can tell where it's okay to start, and usually that's by the host or hostess, who will kind of pick up their cutlery and say bon appetit, and they'll start making the gesture that it's okay to start eating.
Yeah, and sometimes it can happen that the host will say, oh, start without me, it's fine, it's fine. You still shouldn't start. It's just a polite thing to do. I mean, if they do say that and you do start eating, I think, you know, they might understand that you're foreign, or maybe you're not familiar with the culture, but you should still wait for the host and everyone to be seated at the table to start eating. It's just seen as more polite, because eating is seen as something that's convivial, and we like it when it's like that way. And if you don't wait for people, it's kind of seen as, you know, not convivial, I guess.
The next social faux pas to keep in mind is don't flaunt your money. You should never make people around you feel inferior to you. And so showing off your money could potentially be a way to make other people feel inferior to you, or that they have less than you.
It's sort of true. Money tends to be quite taboo in France. I kind of don't agree with that aspect of French culture, because I personally don't mind if people talk to me about money, or if I'm happy to give people my salary or whatever. But I know a lot of French people will be sort of not very keen on telling you about their money. It's just kind of not done so much. I'm not sure why. I think it's just about being modest and, as she said, not making people feel inferior.
While that might be sort of okay for us to talk about money, in France it could be seen as bragging or sort of sending signals about how much wealth you have. So just be careful about that kind of thing. If you're lucky enough to be invited to a party in France, be careful not to show up on time. In general, you should show up maybe 10 to 15 minutes late, but it completely depends on the people, it depends on the region. But just keep in mind that turning up perfectly on time may be a source of stress or inconvenience for the host or hostess because they may not be perfectly ready yet.
That's kind of true. I don't think it's very normal in a way to be exactly on time, but yeah, it's definitely seen as okay to be late about 15 minutes. Don't overdo it. Don't arrive like an hour late or half an hour late. That'll be seen as quite rude, because if the person is planning for you to be there at like 8, they might make sure the food is ready by 8. So if you arrive at 8:30 or 8:45 or something like that, it might be that the food will go cold, and that's kind of upsetting if you're making an effort to make a meal. So I wouldn't overdo it, but yeah, I don't think it would be normal to arrive on time, but I wouldn't think someone would be super offended if you arrived on time. I don't think it would be such a bad faux pas. So I think she's fairly right. I would agree with her.
And speaking of showing up to parties, don't show up to parties without bringing something. I know that this is probably quite universal, but even if the host says, no, don't worry about it, don't bring something, really sort of insist. And a really classic thing to take, just so that you don't turn up empty-handed at least, is a nice fresh baguette from the bakery if you've been invited around to dinner, for example. The next...
I think this one was a bit of a controversy. The baguette thing is not really true, I don't think so. It is true though that you should not turn up to a party empty-handed, because it's just sort of the etiquette. You should always come with something. It can be flowers. You can just go to the bakery right before and pick up a few cakes or one pastry for everyone. Depends on what you want to do. Maybe the person has the food all covered, so you might want to just bring flowers, and that's fine. But yeah, it's usually seen as a good thing to bring something, I think.
Social faux pas would be to turn up to any sort of social gathering or situation, whether that be with 2 people or 10 people, and not say hello to everybody, and when you leave, say goodbye to everybody. And yes, this can be a hassle. Like if you're at a party with 40 people, it can be quite annoying going around the whole room doing la bise, saying Rosie, enchantée, Rosie, enchantée. And when you say goodbye, ideally it would be nice to if you said goodbye to every person as well.
I don't think this one is fully true. I don't think people would expect you to faire la bise to everyone, so kissing on the cheek, because if there is a lot of people, if there's 2 or 3 people, then sure, you should probably do it, I think. Or shake hands if you're really uncomfortable. That's sort of okay if you're meeting people for the first time. You can shake hands. I would do that sometimes. But I don't think people would expect you to kiss everyone on the cheek if there's 40 people in a party. You can just say like hi to everyone, like bonjour, and then Kevin, or I don't know, whatever. You don't have to introduce yourself to every person. You can just sort of get to know them throughout the party, and that's fine. And same thing for goodbyes. I often just sort of sneak out. I say bye to the people I was maybe talking to consistently throughout the party, but the other people, if I run into them on my way out, I just say bye or au revoir, or maybe I kiss them on the cheek. But don't think you have to do that with everyone. That's not true.
The next thing not to do in France may seem a little bit illogical, but don't be too friendly. One of the first cities that I went to was Montpellier. So I got onto the tram system with people, public transport, and I'd smile at people and say bonjour and sit right beside them and say bonjour, comment allez-vous? And once, this little old lady actually took her handbag and slightly turned away from me, like, please don't steal my bag. And it was in this moment where I realized, oh, this is not normal here. If you're smiling at people, they may get a bit freaked out. They may be a bit skeptical of you, like, what does this person want from me?
That's a fair point. I think I found the bit very funny because, yeah, it is true. Don't go into a train or bus or whatever and say hi to everyone. That's very weird. And if someone did that on the bus, I would assume they come in here to ask for money, like, you know, if they're begging for money. And I think that might be why the old lady tried to hide her handbag. But yeah, don't do that. That's kind of seen as weird. We don't like to be too friendly because being friendly too early is seen as something that's rude and too intrusive. But actually, being formal and sort of distant shows that you respect the other person's space.
The next one may be obvious because you are, of course, in France, but sometimes it's pretty hard to resist. Don't hug French people. Well, at least the ones that you don't know very, very well. In France, of course, you've got to do la bise, the cheek kissing, because if you hug a French person, they'll probably feel very uncomfortable, like, what is happening? What is happening? It feels so intimate for them. I know for us, the thought of kissing is very intimate, and we're like, wow, that's so intimate that you have to kiss strangers. But for them, a hug, you know, it's full body to body, and actually for them, that's a lot more intimate.
She's right about hugging. Hugging is not really done in France unless you're close to a person or if you're romantically involved, then that's okay. But with strangers or people you meet at a party, hugging is sort of seen as weird. In fact, I always tell that story to people that want to know how we sort of greet in France. It's on my first day, I believe, or first week in England, I said hi to someone and I wanted to kiss them on the cheek because I was still French in my mind, and that was very awkward because I was going for the cheek and they were going for a hug and none of us were expecting that, so that was a good example of cultural differences. But yeah, I mean, do not hug, avoid that, that's too weird.
So that's all from me for this time, guys. I hope you're having a fantastic week. Until next time, a bientôt!
So I think that was an interesting video, and I thought the points that she was going to make were going to be more stereotypical, but actually I think most of what she said was fair enough and fairly true actually. I don't really understand the backlash she got, because I know that she did a reaction video after that saying that she offended people. I don't think anything she said was offensive. I mean, I wouldn't expect her to know everything, you know, to know a culture well. I think you need to be immersed in it from, maybe not birth, though I think it's easier, but for a very long time. And it's kind of hard sometimes to know or guess how things are done. But yeah, I think it was a very interesting video. And yeah, I think that's it for me for today. And I will see you next week. Bye.